Super excited to have two fantastic gentlemen in with me today, and we're going to talk about a wide variety of topics. But I really wanted to sort of focus on, a lot of times we hear and see the media, and we sometimes blame them for certain things, or we disagree with them, or there's a lot of different stuff that goes on. But I wanted you to hear directly from two folks that are directly involved in it. So I'm super excited to have them both on board. So I'm going to make a quick little intro for both of them and then invite you guys in one at a time. First, I'm going to start with Brandon. Brandon London was born in Virginia, went to school at UMass, which I don't know why he'd want to go to Massachusetts to college, but he did. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And wasn't drafted back in 2007, but he ended up playing in the NFL. He played for the Giants. He played for the Dolphins with the Steelers. He also went up north and started speaking some French and played for the Montreal Alouettes in the CFL. But he's also involved with it. He's got a podcast called Conversations with the Cultured Athlete. He's also heavily involved he's on TV, and he's got a new show coming up, and just a fantastic guy. Brandon London, come on in. And batting next is Larry. So Larry, hey Brandon, thank you. So Larry Berger, he is the head of sports video operations and executive producer and a senior producer at USA Today. He's just a senior, but not in age, of course, with the sports media group. He attended University of Albany or SUNY Albany. He worked with the NBA for 15 plus years in a variety of areas. He worked on, or he's interviewed such luminaries, and it's luminary to me, Wayne Gretzky, kind of a good guy, pretty amazing. Adam Silver, the current NBA commissioner, and lots of other folks. Larry Berger, please join us. Come on in. I feel like I'm an announcer right now. Do I sound like an announcer, Brandon? Kind of?
Ish. Yeah.
Ish?
You're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. You're doing a good. I'd hire you. I'd hire you.
Ish. Hey, thank you so much for being here, gentlemen. I really appreciate you sharing your time. We have a really nice crowd here today. And just first off, Brandon, do me a favor and tell me a little bit about what compelled you to go from playing a sport professionally to wanting to be in front of a camera.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. It was the TV show Entourage. Like it was 2000, I believe 9. I got released from the Miami Dolphins. Was kind of working out, trying to keep myself in shape throughout the season to get picked up by another team, and no other team picked me up. So I spent a lot of downtime at the house, and I was just watching Entourage. And I thought the show was great. Like I'd done some on-camera stuff during my time with the New York Giants. I'd walk fashion shows, BT Ripped the Runway and all, and I got a chance to see the production side of TV. It wasn't just about being on camera or being a model or anything. You got to see the lights of the producing, the directing, everything that got involved. So I kind of realized that at that time maybe my dream was slipping away in the NFL, and I got to start thinking of what is it that I kind of wanted to do, and just in case. So I started watching Entourage, and then one thing led to the next. I ended up in Canada having one of the best seasons that I was having up there, and I was going to go back to the NFL with Mark Trestman, who was my then head coach at the time, and ended up coaching with the Chicago Bears the following year. But I had a bucket tear in my meniscus, and I was done for the season. So right there is when I knew that I was going to start going out to LA during my off seasons and getting on camera training to be, better TV host and get better get better as an actor as well, getting trained not only theater but also just on camera and commercial as well. So I think it was then in Miami where that bug kind of it went from a seed to you could start seeing it sprout just a little bit, and then through other circumstances that happened throughout the rest of my career, it kind of just pushed me off the ledge and was like, you're in it now.
So Entourage was the catalyst. So should I assume that right now you've got an entourage that follows you around everywhere?
No, I'm a low key guy, but I am trying to get more videographers and stuff because content is everything, and I live this really cool life here. So in terms of branding myself and trying to show that whole cultured athlete brand, then I'm trying to get, a videographer and a friend or two. But I'm not those days of spinning, of buying bottles for everybody and buying shots for everybody. It's like, nah, I'd rather put that more, contribute to my 401k a little bit more, buy some
Oh, you're a
property.
smart guy. You should be sharing that wealth of knowledge with other folks that
Yeah.
don't necessarily do that. But thanks, that's great. Larry, I'm going to turn this a similar question to you because obviously you've been in this business a long time. But what was it that let's say you came out of college? I mean, was this something that you fell into, that you got into on purpose? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a funny story. I went to, as you mentioned, SUNY Albany,
Yeah.
and I was the sports director of my college radio station, and I did an internship after my freshman year at WWOR TV Channel 9. And it was funny because I went there for an interview, and then when I said I just finished my freshman year, they're like, "No, we can't hire you because you have to be heading into your senior year." So I asked the gentleman to just hold my resume, and if he changes his mind, whatever. He looks at my resume and he sees SUNY Albany, and he goes, "Wow, I went to SUNY Albany," and he hired me on the spot. And
Nice.
I was making $8 a day, so not $8 an hour, but I was making $8 a day. And so I did that. I did a couple of other internships as an underclassman at MSG Network. And then when it was time to graduate college, I felt like I had this really good resume and had done some interesting internships. So that amounted to working, selling young men's clothes at Abraham and Strauss,
Oh, cool.
making $4 an hour plus commission. Nobody
Nice.
wanted to hire me. In the real world, what I had done really didn't amount to too much. And somebody at A&S went to Columbia with somebody at the NBA, and relationships. And Brandon, I think you could attest to this. Relationships is everything in this industry. And I was able to land an interview. Coincidentally, the gentleman who interviewed me, who is, who Brandon worked for with the New York Giants, Don Sperling, a wonderful guy. So he interviewed me as the executive producer at NBA Entertainment, and he asked me to name the starting five for the Sacramento Kings. And if I could do that, I would get the job. And I think I got 3 or 4 out of the 5, and he's like, "Welcome aboard." And it really launched my career by Don taking a chance on me, and it amounted to, as you mentioned, 15 years at the NBA. A wonderful organization, great people. I learned so much about video production, media production, how to treat people, how to be treated, how to conduct interviews. Literally every facet of life was grown by working at the NBA. And then I went to MSG Varsity, and now I'm with USA Today Sports. But it's been a fun ride, some bumps here and there, but overall, it's been a lot of fun.
Wow, you just wrapped up like 80-year career in 2 minutes there. That was pretty good. So, but that's really cool. So while you were at the NBA, then, you, as you mentioned, you did a lot of different things. What was the favorite? What did you enjoy doing the most?
Wow. I mean, there was so many interesting things that I did. I produced series, I launched series, I wrote series, I interviewed the biggest names in NBA history, from Chamberlain to Jordan to LeBron, et cetera, et cetera. But if I had to say the favorite one was helping spearhead the league's historical preservation project. So I had carte blanche to research who played in the 40s and the 50s that were still alive, who played, who coached, who was the announcers, and track them down and interview them before they passed away. And that took me to a golf course in West Virginia, where I found Fred Schaus, who was an original player in the NBA, also coached the Lakers in the 70s. I found Butch Van Bredikoff, who coached Will Chamberlain with the Lakers and played in the 40s or 50s. Tracked him down to a nursing home in Spokane, Washington. Found Kenny Sailors in Laramie, Wyoming. He's credited with inventing the jump shot. And just talking to these guys was just, it was so emotional for them and emotional for me, because the way they reacted was, I mean, I was talking about the most special time in their life, 50, 60 years prior. and it brought tears to their eyes. And being able to remember some of those experiences was very, very special. And one little footnote to that, I told my father, who I've interviewed, Chamberlain, and this one and that one, and he always said, "Have you interviewed Vince Barilla?" And I'm like, "Who?" So I did a Google search, and he played for my father's team, the Knicks, in the mid '50s. Played, had a good 3-year career, 5-year career, whatever. So I tracked him down to Colorado and interviewed him, and he made me call my father from his kitchen, and he got on the phone, and my father spoke to Vince Barilla, this 80-year-old man, and he was starstruck, about my son just interviewed Vince Barilla. I'm like, "Dad, I've interviewed Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and forget those guys. Vince Barilla, that's the one." But anyway, that was so many great experiences at the NBA, but that's definitely at the head of the list.
Oh, that's really cool. I love that. Those stories are amazing, and it's interesting because a lot of times the current generation doesn't necessarily pay attention to the history of a sport. They see today's stars and so forth, and they don't even look backwards too much at some of the people that really got it all going. But with that, Brandon, tell me a little bit about maybe give me one or two people that really inspired you along the way regarding your football career. Like who were some of the people that really brought you along?
Being the son of a football coach, my dad is Mike London. He's coached for the University of Virginia. He's won a national championship with the University of Richmond. He's currently at Win and Mary. So growing up with him, he had stints at Boston College, Win and Mary, Richmond prior. I got a chance to be around a bunch of guys, soon to be like NFL type guys. And off the top of my head, there's one guy, Chris Hovan. He played with Boston College. He's a defensive lineman, got drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. He was just a worker. His work ethic was off the charts. My dad loved working with him. Anytime my dad would bring us into the offices, to go work out or to go be around the team because I was a ball boy. He was nonstop. His motor, just his personality, charisma. I was always drawn to him. Whenever I used to leave my dad's office, he knew where I was. I was hanging out with him somewhere. And then he spent some time with the University of Virginia for a while before he went back as head coach. And Billy McMullen was a guy who ended up playing for the Seattle Seahawks. And again, as a kid, I was just drawn to work ethic. I was a big mouth kid, so I always knew I had to outwork everyone to give myself a chance because I was kind of skinny. I was this little, just loud mouth, skinny guy with crooked teeth and braces, running his mouth. But I've always been attracted to the workers, to the guys who get there the first and then leave last. Those are two guys growing up. Because watching that were hands-on as well, that I got a chance to hang out with, work out with, run routes with, those two guys I'll forever in my head, be looked at as two people who contributed to my own work ethic and my success.
That's amazing. You know what you have to do? You have to tell them someday.
Oh yeah, I've told them both a million. I think Billy's probably now like when I tell him like, "Okay, bro, I get it." I get it.
All right, so switching gears, those are two great examples. Thank you. So switching gears a little bit, you mentioned earlier about looking for a videographer to follow you a little bit to really talk more about your brand and who you are and what will make you compelling to folks on the outside. But what is it that what would you like people to see about you that they may not see, whether it's in front of the camera or the microphone or whatever it might be?
I think there's a level of realness and vulnerability to me. I think a lot of people get caught up in the image of me. Oh, you're former professional athlete, and you've modeled, you've walked in international shows, and you've done this, and you do these TV shows. Like a lot of people, and even though I'm no big name, I'm no Tom Brady. I'll be the first one to tell people that and all. A lot of people they come to me and it's like they think that I'm going to be living up to a certain image. I don't care anymore. I'm open to people. I've made money, gone broke. I've had to pawn my Super Bowl ring got that back. I've had to do things to make it out in LA and all, and like really grind it out with that LA living, because being a practice squad guy or only having 1-2 accredited years in the NFL, they're not really going to give, ESPN is really not going to give you a job just based off of your career. You got to work for it. So I think that I've attained this level of realness, and that's I think why the Giants fans love me so much, because I go to their houses, do fan caves, their tailgates, and I hang out just like I'm just one of the people, one of the guys. So I think that's something that I want to really get across when it comes to like showing my brand. Yeah, I still have luxury involved, and I can still do cool stuff, but at the same time, it's me hanging with the Chelsea fan group, watching the games, having a pint with my mates or whatever, or going to Fashion Week, hanging out, talking to some pretty interesting people and all, so I'm all about people's stories and learning the culture, like learning where people are from and what the story is behind them. So that's what I'm going to, I wasn't big on it at first because I always wanted to keep my private life private. But now you hit a point where it's like there are people reaching out and asking for advice and all, and just they just got this entertainment business so wrong because of what the visual, what everyone thinks you're supposed to be doing or how you're supposed to be living, and that's completely wrong. So that realness within the journey as I continue to climb, that's what I want to show and portray.
No, that's great. I love that. And listen, you're absolutely right. I think people tend to be interested in hearing more about someone that shows the vulnerability, not just the 24/7 how perfect and amazing I am, but
Absolutely.
that I've got these limitations and weaknesses and that sort of thing. So I think that's fantastic. Um, Larry, when you interview some of the big names, and when you have in the past, and I mean, I'm not familiar with this Michael Jordan you talk of, but when you prepare for these interviews, I mean, how do you? Because I think people just think that people show up and say, "Hey, Michael." No. I mean, what's the preparation like? Tell me what you do before an interview like that.
Well, the first thing and the most important thing is understanding what is the interview going to be used for. So anybody can talk to Michael Jordan for 4 hours and do an interview forever, but what is it going to be used for? Bottom line is, like, you don't want to come back from an interview and go into the edit room and you have a piece to cut and you're like, wow, I don't have the elements because I was talking about all these other things. So identifying what it's going to be used for is first and foremost. The next thing is, I feel like I have a really thorough knowledge of all sports. I've been doing it literally every day. I've focused on sports literally every day of my life, period. Like literally every day of my life, I've focused either a little bit, medium amount, or a ton on sports. But every day of my life has been focused on my passion, which is sports. Add to that the internet, which is the greatest, I'm not breaking any news here, but it's the greatest invention of all time in terms of what we do. Any piece of information that we need, any fact, any stat, any teammate of this guy who played in the 50s that you're trying to look up, it can be had. So the most important things are those things, and also being able to have the self-confidence in yourself, which will ideally translate to a conversation as opposed to a question and answer period. Because when you have a question and answer session, you're not going to break through with the athlete. And it's like subconsciously, you have to get across the point that you know what you're talking about, this gentleman's career or lady's career, and you're not bragging or anything like that, but it has to be like the humble brag, so to speak, by getting it across that your stuff. And I think, Brandon, you've been interviewed 1,000 times as a pro athlete. I think you're a great one to ask this question to. How do you respond? Like, what do you respond to in terms of when you're interviewed? Like, I mean, do you see it the way I see it in terms of you look to see how prepared and how knowledgeable the interviewer is?
Well, I think I have the best of both worlds, to where, being the person being interviewed, and now I'm the person interviewing now. So like you said, when back then, first and foremost, if you're going to interview me, I'm like, oh, well, like I'm getting interviewed, all these guys, but so I would make sure that I was going to give personality because that's who I was at that time. But I always used to love the people who used to come with that little piece of information that no one knew, or you're not used to being asked. I think that really shows that you've done your research, also without fanboying as well, because I've done daytime TV the last 3 years out in Denver, Colorado, a nationally syndicated show called Daily Blast Live. So we're talking to it could be one of the Real Housewives, or it could have been like a Vivica Fox or someone. We understand, or Kristen Dunst, Kristen Bell. We understand they're promoting something, they're doing something, but every single media outlet on the satellite tour, on the talkback, is asking the same question. So being able to have some sort of something to where it's like, oh, you remember that short film I did way back, or you saw that? What do you know about? Or for an athlete, like, yeah, that was my AAU team. We played together back at AAU basketball. Having something like that has them take their guard down just a little bit, and I think they appreciate that in that sense. So using that when I go, the separation is in the preparation, and finding those little nuggets to be able to make it, like you said, more conversational than just a Q&A session.
And also, I think you bring up some great points, Brandon. When you are insanely knowledgeable on the subject and you're really prepared and you've done your homework, you have this confidence. The confidence is portrayed to the subject, because and that's the most important thing. Like if you're not confident and you're like all flustered and you don't know what's going on there, and you're nervous, it comes across, and then the subject is nervous, and you can't extract great elements when both sides are nervous.
Did you see that reminds me of there was that amazing skit on Saturday Night Live with Chris Farley, and he's interviewing Paul McCartney, and it was brilliant. And I just saw it again the other day, where Chris Farley is like, his hands are sweating, he's super nervous, and Paul McCartney is sitting next to him, and he says, Paul, it's so great that you're here, this is so awesome. So like you were in the Beatles, right? He goes, yeah. He's like, yeah, so that was awesome, right? And he's like, yeah. And he doesn't know. So then he starts asking, he says, well, Paul, he doesn't know what to say. He says, that time you were arrested in Japan for smoking weed, and so Paul's like, I don't really like to talk about that anymore. He goes, oh, I'm such an idiot. It was so funny how he just didn't know how to run an interview. So you're absolutely right, Larry. I've seen a lot of people interview others where either they're nervous, but I think it's also more just, as you said, the preparation. And also, as Brandon, you were saying, I get so sick and tired of all the cliched interviews and the same old questions and the same old answers. I'd ask you, Brandon, for example, when you were playing in New York, were you living in the city, or were you living out in Jersey, or where were you?
I was living in Jersey. I was in Jersey.
What was your favorite part of the commute?
To work?
Yeah.
That it took 5 minutes for me walking out my apartment to getting to my locker. I live right across the street.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, that was it was just, I wake up and be in the weight room in no time. So that was the best part.
It's funny because if you had lived in the city, I would say your favorite part of it is Lincoln Tunnel. I'd be completely joking, but the part, and every time I go through the tunnel, I have flashback to Stephen King wrote a book called The Stand, and in it there's some sort of massive, zombie apocalypse or something, and everybody gets stuck in the tunnel with like all the dead people. And so every time I'm in there, I'm thinking, oh my God, if all the lights go out and the cars stop, what do I have to do to get out of here alive? So that's probably why it's good that I don't live in Jersey.
Well, thanks, Mark. I got to go through the tunnel to get home
read
tonight.
The book. Read the book. And I'll really freak you out. Or I can just get the passage if you want. Okay. See, no one's ever asked you about that before. There we go. Larry, did I do okay on that?
Oh, yeah.
I look to you for guidance here. Anyways, so back to what I want to talk about a little bit, though, is that I think that the sports fan out there, the public, what they see typically are the announcers that are announcing the game, they see the sideline reporters, they see, sometimes they'll see footage of the production going on with all the televisions and that sort of thing. But they don't see they see Sunday Night Football and they think it's just pop, there it is on my TV. And what I want to talk about briefly right now is, and if each of you can just tell me a little bit about your experience with the grind and the nuts and the bolts that goes behind the work that you do to get to the point where the public sees that finished product. So Larry, with you and with the work that you're doing at USA Today, we were chatting earlier and you were talking about the effort that it takes to get the content together, to get it published, to get it out there. Tell me a little bit about that and how you arrive at all that content that we see that day.
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate you acknowledging the what goes on behind the scenes, because a lot goes on behind the scenes, and I see Brandon shaking his head. We just finished the Super Bowl with a staff of, I believe it's about five or six people. We produced over 70 pieces of content for our franchises, which is an ever-growing roster stable of franchises. We now have 3 betting franchises, and we have, Sports Seriously, and we have Sports Pulse, and we're on OTT, and we're on desktop, and we're on social. It goes all over the place. And, I wouldn't say it's organized chaos behind the scenes, because I think we're beyond that a little bit, but there are so many different moving parts. Sticking with the Super Bowl, we interviewed Hall of Famers, Heisman Trophy winners, Pro Bowl players, all on Radio Row. This one's coming in at 2:15, but they're late. But we have a 2:30, but they can come at 2:45. Oh no, we're double booked at 2:45. It's crazy. I mean, what goes on? And speaking about USA Today, one of the things that I'm intimately involved in is that we have USA Today and the editorial team that I talk with on a consistent basis in Tyson's. Plus, we have Sports Digital Properties, which is a whole host of websites that we own and operate, like For the Win and Hoops Hype. And then we have the network, which is 120 plus newspapers around the country, and everybody needs to be dialed in as to what we're doing. And I need to know what they're doing, and we need to get content from reporters, and we got to turn it around. And our staff is depleted because this one's out, and that one's out. So there's a lot of different things that goes on behind the scenes. Bottom line is, it's like any other industry. Communication is key. Relationships are key, and working hard is key. Those are the key, the most important things. And then at the end of the day, most of the time, everything comes out comes out effectively. We high five, we hug at the end of the day. There's some feelings that are hurt in the process, but at the end of the day, we hug it out, and hopefully, things are successful, and many more times than not, it is.
I'm guessing the last couple of years haven't been too challenging though, with COVID and stuff. I mean, I'm guessing that hasn't impacted your work at all.
In a big way. In a big way. But I'll tell you this: it's opened a new avenue for us in terms of doing these StreamYard interviews or Zoom interviews. And it's a lot easier, as opposed to them coming to the studio. The athletes come to the studio, they sit at their desk, and they're on with USA Today. And then after that, it's another outlet, then another outlet, then another outlet. And so COVID has been terrible. But in terms of what I do, it's definitely added a lot of issues. But in one small regard, it's been beneficial.
Yeah, I suppose there's been some silver lining here and there. That's what I always try to look for, is the silver lining in certain things. And I think that it's as much as it's kept people apart, it's brought them together in different ways. And so hopefully going forward, when we start coming together in person a lot more, we can also use and leverage the abilities we learned to connect in other ways. So we'll see how that shakes out. Brandon, give me one of the things that you've experienced in the media world that either you didn't expect or you were surprised to see happening. Like what give me something like that you weren't expecting?
I think I think it goes into, I think it plays into the amount of research you're going to have to do before you open your mouth, especially being on camera. You can tell who's not prepared on a certain topic or something that's going on, because not only they in or they're fumbling their words a lot, but they're just not offering anything. Those people who just talk for a long time and there's no substance, and you're like, I just listened to this person for 3 minutes and I got nothing out of what they're saying. You can tell they were just trying to fill and trying to act like they knew something on a certain subject. So I think one thing for me is this job, not only this job, just the TV industry job has saved my life in a sense, has rebranded it's been a rebirth, because it's one thing you just walking around your entire life being a dumb job. My father's a football coach. I was walking around with football my entire life. All I wanted to do was play football. Never learned history, mathematics, money, none of that stuff. Then you get into TV and, people are hiring you for your looks, but you're getting thrown to actually talk about things and have substance. And I'm sitting there like, I don't even know what they're talking about going into this world. So when I got hired by Daily Blast Live, for 3 years, I've researched like crazy, whether it's politics, whether entertainment industry, whether it's this, that, or the third. I made sure that when we had our meetings in the morning, our 8 o'clock pitch meetings in the mornings, and we had the topics on what we were going to talk about for A block, B block, C block, I would go and I would scour the internet, different point of views, whether it's right side, left side, black, white, green, gay, straight, Muslim, Christian, whatever it is. I'm looking for as many different perspectives on a certain topic as I can get, because then that helps not only educate me, but it helps strengthen my opinion. It's all about my mother and my father, two different people in the sense where my dad's brilliant football guy, great motivational speaker and all. But my mother has always been about academia and tried to push me that route and creativity. And she always used to say, like, in this business, like, be able to peel back layers of a story, of a topic. That's how you're going to resonate with people. And that's how you're going to land, how your perspective is going to land with people. So that's just something that, and now being part of the New York Post, yes, I'm not talking politics or something like that, but in a way you kind of are, because the athletes are talking about it now.
Yeah.
So if an athlete's going to take a knee, or if an athlete is going to speak out on something, and I'm going to be the one interviewing him or her, or I'm going to be the one that's talking about it during the segment, whether it's a stand-up or I'm at the desk, I better darn well know what I'm talking about ×5, because the viewer is going to look at you and they're just waiting for you to mess up, especially New York fans. New York fans waiting for you to mess up. Whether it's a name, pronunciation of a name, whatever it is. Oh, you know what you're talking about. That's you got to roll the R. You know what I mean? Like, so you better know what you're talking about and be confident in what you're speaking on. Otherwise, it's don't even show up. Don't even say anything about it. You're better off not saying anything about it, because it comes off.
Quick question for everybody listening. A block, C block, B block. What's that? You mentioned it earlier.
A block is that first block that you see, that the panelists, people talking, and then you go to commercial. B block is when you come back from commercial. C block is right after that. So sorry, it's like those
segments,
those segments and all, before and after commercial.
Excellent, I love it, Larry. We're covering a lot of ground here, but I guess one thing I'd love to hear a little bit more about is, what would you say is, I mean, maybe same question for you. What's one thing that you think that your typical reader is not going to know about what you're doing behind the scenes?
Our viewers, they want to be educated, but they also want it in digestible form. So these videos that are 5 minutes and 4 minutes, no, like 60 to 90 seconds, get to the point. They want to be educated, but also want to be entertained. They want to feel a connection, a kinship. They want to feel an emotion with what they're hearing. And I think that's the most important thing. Brandon talked about, being educated on the subject, insanely important, but you also have to connect with the viewer. And I think that's a challenge sometimes, because some of the stuff is like very cut and dry. This guy won the MVP. This one is injured or whatever.
Mhm.
So you got to tell you tell the story, but you also have to include something else. And the most important thing that I find is connecting with the audience. Whoever's talking needs to connect with the audience in some regard.
Well, so speaking of that, what's the secret behind connecting with the audience?
Being conversational,
Hmm.
and I think Brandon does a fabulous job. I've watched Brandon is a friend of mine. He's done a fabulous job for many years. But a quick story, he came over my house for dinner with my wife in Fort Lee, New Jersey. And I'm like, Brandon, like what goes on in the huddle? And, give me some football lingo. Like what goes on, And Brandon, I don't know if you could repeat it, but like stuff that I have no idea. And I've followed sports forever. But, just throwing out terms and colors and numbers, and I have no idea what he's talking about, okay? So Brandon has that knowledge, but also communicates extremely effectively and can talk, to the person or with the person, with the viewer, not at them, and doesn't bowl them over with this insane knowledge that he possesses. So I think that's a skill. And it's insanely important.
Yeah, and for anyone who, everyone that's listening, it's Don Sperling always tells me, Larry, keep it simple, stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes you go there and you do all this research. Trust me, you're going to do all this research. You're going to be like, oh, I'm skilled at this person or this topic. And then you're going to go up there and you only, like Larry said, you only have 1:30 to give this information. No one wants anyone who's just going to be sitting there. Well, in 1922, he had ERA of 3.67 and blah, blah, blah. And the viewers just sitting there like, dude, like that's way too much for me right now.
You got to come out firing. You have to come out
firing. It has to be relatable. You may not even need those numbers. Some fans don't even care. They just want to see, they want to connect with you, and like they want to see the passion, like what you're talking about. They want you to crack a joke in there or something, and then bring it back when you have to, because this is a little bit more serious on this end. So if the art of storytelling is kind of, for me, the host is what I do, but I work with the producers because I want to know what graphics they're going to have, what SOT they're going to put up, what videos they're going to put up in that sense, because then it helps me kind of take that viewer on that 1:30, and then boom, now you've got viral or potentially viral type content. And for anyone, I see the TED Talks and the TEDx talk and stuff like that. If you're a public speaker or whatever, it's about taking whoever it is that you're talking to on a journey, and then bam, you want them coming back for more.
Do you think my story about zombies in Lincoln Tunnel was relatable? No, okay. Guess not. Now, both are like, So the bottom line with a lot of this stuff, anyway, is that it's a skill for people to be able to be good storytellers, but then also to be relatable, to be able to sort of connect on the same level, kind of a thing. Because again, if a broadcaster, an analyst, a former athlete, a current athlete is speaking down to the audience, then they're going to lose them, I think. So it's got to be something where on the level, they're at that same level.
Well, Mark, just one other thing that I think is so important. I don't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
I think like this industry is all about, in addition to educating, but it's about emotion. Like you have to be able to feel something. The viewer wants to feel something, and there's so many different ingredients that allows the viewer to feel whatever it is that the producer, host, whatever is trying to portray. And to me, the most effective one is music. Position music, or stock music, whatever you want to call it, which basically subconsciously tells the viewer what emotions to feel. And then the other ingredients are the video, the sound bites, the script that you write, the voiceover that you write. All of this comes together, and the key part is to evoke whatever emotion it is that you're trying to evoke. but you have to evoke emotion, some emotion, happy, excited, inspired, sad, whatever it is. That's the beauty of what we do in video production. And I think that's, you never want to lose sight of the goal. And that to me is the goal.
That's fantastic. Brandon, you know, you've had an athletic career. Now you're really knee deep in media. Where do you see yourself over the next couple of years taking a lot of this?
I'm always going to be the first Brendan London, but I'll be the next Michael Strahan. And I tell him that all the time. He set the blueprint in terms of where I want to go with my career, from going behind the scenes, creating, being executive producer for so many big hit shows, game shows. Now the with him, the Undefeated, and being able to really peel back layers for athlete lives and have athletes really tell stories and all. I think that's something I'm kind of working on now. And then also with just his entrepreneurship, you know, his clothing brand, some of his real estate, the things he's done with the cars and everything, you know, just building that empire, you know. And again, I'm one of those people where if I don't hit Good Morning America, I'm not going to feel like I'm not successful or anything like that. He and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson have just given me kind of like a compass on where I want to go, but I'm going to always put my own personality to it. I'm going to put my own brand to it and all as well. So, you know, Michael Strahan kind of took it to another ticket. No athlete has really taken it, you know, before. And that's something that blueprint, that module is kind of what I'm kind of following in a sense, but always being true to who I am, my voice and my experiences in life. But it's easier when you can see it from someone and you know, and you can text that person, be like, hey man, great job. Hey, what cameras do you guys use on that? Hey, what'd you do? And I've even pitched him projects before and he's been like, nah, you're not ready yet. Which to me, that just means keep working, you know, keep working at it.
Yeah.
So that guy, he's been very instrumental in my career and all. And I always thank him for kind of putting himself out there and setting the blueprint.
All right. So Michael Strahan, as you may know, is an astronaut. Sort of.
Yeah, he's been. I'm not going to space, though. I can let you
All right,
know.
I just figured I'd ask.
I'm not going to space. So that's a no-go.
That's sort of like me and bungee jumping and stuff.
Yeah.
I'll leave it for other people to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, he can keep that accomplishment. I won't touch one. I won't touch that one.
That's great. Hey, Larry. So, you're not going to get in trouble with this answer, so don't worry about it. But I was going to say, when the day comes, it could be a decade from now or more, that you decide to move on from USA Today or something, like what would be to you an ideal next scenario? Would it be sort of remaining doing what you're doing, or is there something you've always said, oh man, I'd love to try doing blank?
What I enjoy doing is using all the skills that I've acquired in 30 years in the industry. So what in 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, I want to be able to use my abilities and the skills that I've learned in shooting, editing, writing, producing, directing. I've done a documentary on Karl Anthony Towns, long form, short form. I just love it. I love the industry. I want to keep doing it. But I also would like to host a podcast, being able to utilize my relationships as well as a lot of worthless information up here that has been gathered since studying baseball cards at the age of 6. So I'd like to possibly do that, and also continue and focus a little bit more on media training, which I've been doing for the past 10 to 15 years, teaching elite amateur athletes on how to promote a positive image and how to create a positive image for themselves via proper interviewing techniques. As you know, I've mentioned, I've interviewed hundreds, maybe thousands of athletes. Some are great, some are terrible, but all have a lesson, and you can learn something from each and every one of them. And I've been blessed to be able to pass along some of that information to Karl Anthony Towns and a couple of other elite amateur athletes and teach them about growing their brands through proper interviewing techniques. And most importantly, not playing defense with interviews, but playing offense. when you hear media training, you always think, oh, you don't want to mess up and say this and that and the other thing. So you play defense. Bottom line is this great opportunity to play offense and to grow your brand by doing the right things. And as Brandon mentioned earlier, by being educated on whatever it is that you're going to talk about. You could take, whatever stance you take, you have to back it up with facts, and you have to be ready for questions and follow-up questions. So you really have to know your stuff. So I would say utilizing my entire skill set, maybe doing a podcast and continuing to do media training. That's what I'd like to do in the next decade or so.
That's really cool. It's funny. I have a podcast, and it's at first I was worried about, gee, how many people are going to listen? But it quickly evolved into really enjoying the conversations with the guest speakers, and also, the relationships that develop, because you'll find that, and I know you know this already, but if you do a nice job interviewing, and if you're cognizant of what, as you said earlier, not just what do I want to get out of the interview, but really more importantly, what do I want my guests to get out of it? What do they want to get out of it? If it's to help promote their brand, or what they're doing at USA Today, or whatever it might be, it's always important to put yourself in their mindset, their shoes, and really try to anticipate, how can I really help them get to where they want to be, while I'm trying to sort of further my own stuff too. So I think, and Larry, you'd be fantastic. So sign me up. I'm ready to subscribe. I'll send guests your way, although you have probably 200,000 million trillion of them to do. But anyways, so before we wrap things up and go back to the tables and chat with folks, Brandon, give me a piece of advice that you might give a current athlete who, may be sort of right around the corner from having to retire, whether it's by injury, whether it's by sort of, other younger athletes coming up and bumping them out, that sort of thing. What kind of advice would you give someone who's nearing the end of their career?
Find yourself outside of your sport. Find yourself, because when the lights go out, that clock hits 0000, and it's it. There's a lot of guys and women athletes who struggle because sports has been your identity the entire time. Guys used to laugh at me in the CFL in Montreal when we'd be all hanging out, playing Madden, just kicking it. And I'm leaving with my backpack to go to Montreal School of Performing Arts because I had theater class. And I would just remember one of the former teammates saying, "Oh, who you trying to be, fake Will Smith?" And everybody laughing and all, That same, fast forward like 5-6 years later, that same athlete was asking me for tickets for hey man, I love what you're doing. I saw you and Odell Beckham Jr. on the video. Congratulations and all. So and that same guy struggled with it wasn't even retirement. He got cut. No one picked him up outside of that, So it's one of those things where you got to find yourself outside of the sport. Find what you love, find your passions, because there's ways to monetize your passion, and the things that you love to do. So that would be my biggest advice ever.
That's perfect. It's funny is that, and that's a lot of the, when I'm working with athletes, what I try to talk to them about is the whole notion of, when you're playing a sport and you're deep in the sport, that is your plan A, and that's the only plan, period. So if someone ever says, "Oh, Mark, you got to be ready for plan B," there's no plan B. There's plan A, and I've got to stick to it. But if you instead talk to an athlete and say, "Look, don't prepare for plan B yet, because you're doing great here in football. You're doing great baseball, whatever it is. But instead, develop a secondary interest. Develop something that, as you said, a passion, something that you enjoy doing. It can be real estate. It can be music. It can be photography. Fashion. It doesn't matter what it is, but develop something outside of your sport." Studies have shown that when you're an athlete and you're interested in something else, your brain is getting that exercise also, and it's gonna positively impact what you're doing on the field. And a lot of times, as you were saying, a lot of the guys are just hanging out playing Madden and so forth, and that's not working. That's not a good thing. So what you were doing was brilliant. So that's fantastic advice, Brandon. And I truly hope that, 0.001% of all athletes kind of actually retire when they want. Everybody else is kind of shown the door, and they're kicked and no, I don't want to go out that door, right? So the sooner that you can prepare as an athlete, whether you're a student athlete, an amateur, an Olympian, a professional, doesn't matter what level, start developing that secondary interest, and you will be absolutely in a much better spot than you would have been if you weren't. So fantastic advice, Brandon. Uh, Larry, for someone who wants to get into the world of media and television and video production and so forth, what kind of advice would you give them?
Start early and figure out a game plan to give yourself an edge. It's straight up supply and demand. There's and I'm saying this literally, not figuratively. If there's like one job listing, there could be 2,000 resumes for it. You're not going to get the job. So you really have to plan early. Find out who worships at your church, your temple, in the industry. Find out who's in your fraternity, who went to your high school, junior high school, college, whatever. I'll give you one example. I have a 5-year-old son, and we waited after a Jets game, and he got a picture with the then general manager of the Jets, Mike McCagnon. And my son, I think, was 3 or 4 at the time. And we, got the picture, and I sent it to Mike McCagnon, asked him to autograph it, and told him a little bit more about my son, and told him about what I do for a profession. And the goal, it was to create a kinship on some level. He replies, and so tell me about a little bit more about your son, blah blah blah. And fast forward, ideally when my son is writing a book report, he reaches out, and then down the road he has a relationship. Unfortunately, Mike McCagnon got fired as general manager, but that's the thinking. I'm not saying I was 99.9% sure that wouldn't work, but that's the thinking. That's the mindset. What kind of edge are you going to provide yourself? Because don't get it twisted. I mean, you have to provide yourself an edge, and it's never too early to start. Start providing yourself an edge. And what you and Brandon were talking about earlier about pro athletes, it really hit a nerve for me, because when you're a pro athlete, you're a new car. When you sign those retirement papers, you're a used car, and you've lost an exponential amount of leverage and relationships, an ability to reach out to the real estate agency in your football hometown, or whatever it is. Because when you're a pro athlete, you're a hero, so to speak, and then when you retire, you're not. And you have to maximize those relationships and those abilities to have those relationships, and to job shadow and to do an internship in the off season while you're a current athlete. So it's a long-winded answer, but bottom line is you have to use every weapon in your arsenal to provide yourself an edge, be it as a current athlete, a former athlete, or somebody just trying to get into video production.
Well, you mentioned earlier, you got the job because you were interviewing with another fellow SUNY Albany grad, right?
Twice
that's,
that happened.
Well, look, and that's something I talk about all day long. I mean, I would tell Brandon, for example, look, UMass grad, you should be chasing down every other UMass grad and on LinkedIn, join alumni groups, alumni networks, and connect with them if they are in any sort of position of maybe they work in a senior level at a company that may want to endorse you at some point or want to bring you in. They're going to pick you over some schmucko from whatever it is, UVM or somewhere else, because you went to UMass. I mean, that's just the way decisions are made. Yeah.
And Mark, just referring to something else you said earlier, and I think it's applicable here. How are you going to help that alum? Like, that's the key. How are you going to help that person? Just like you were talking about with the podcast. Like, they're trying to promote X, Y, and Z. Great, give them that opportunity. It's the same thing. If you reach out to a UMass alum, how are you going to help them? I'm here to help. It's not like, hey, I'm a UMass alum, I need a job. Can you hire me? It's more nuanced than that. And I know I just wanted to bring that up. That's my take on it, my opinion. I think you would agree with that.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Well, super quick question. James is asking in the Q&A section. He wants to know, who is the toughest person you've had to interview?
Is that for me or for Brandon?
For both of you.
You want me to go first, Larry?
Sure.
Yeah, I got to
Alright.
think.
Some of the New York Post columnists and beat writers, because
Really?
we take, and that's no knock on them. When we do the SNY guys, SNY is TV. They're used to it. Now, this is a new venture for the Post where we're putting the columnists on and we're interviewing them. They have all they have the knowledge, the research. They wrote the article, but sometimes they don't have the personality like the SNY guys and all that. So it's one thing that I've had to learn, and we're going to ask 3 questions. The usual interview is only 3 questions, but depending on who it is, I'm going to have about maybe 6 written down as follow-up questions because they may not be as long-winded as one of the SNY guys and all in that sense. So going from just doing athletes to where, they talk crazy but to this, it's the first time I got like a 2-word answer and I was just like, oh, that was cool. And then, moved on. That's the last time I ever be unprepared like that for something like that. So yeah, it's you'll get to feel that person when you're talking to them a little bit before on kind of how much personality or what that person is going to give you. But now I just go into everything with 3 or 4 extra questions just in case we got to fill some time.
One thing real quick before Larry, you jump in. One thing I've tried to do, because I've definitely run across people like that throughout my career. One thing I try to do is dig up before I speak to somebody. When you talked earlier about doing the research, try to find 2 or 3 things that they seem to be clearly passionate about. If they have an interest in, I don't know, raising goats on a farm, or if they have an interest in skydiving or whatever the hell it is, then I'll throw in a question that ties in with something they're passionate about, because then that'll warm up the temperature a little bit in the room for them, and then hopefully it opens things up a little bit more. Now, obviously, if you can't ask, I don't think you're going to be asking any of these athletes about raising goats or something. Maybe you will, but at the very least, if it's something that just gets them particularly energized, then it sets a nice tone for the rest of the interview sometimes. But it's tough. How about you, Larry? Who's the toughest?
Evan Turner.
Oh,
Former NBA player, and I believe now he's coaching. But the vast majority of athletes have been pretty straightforward, pretty, relatively uneventful. Evan Turner, for some reason, I was in a locker room somewhere. I can't remember what year it was, but I talked about, I think it was like, New York City being the capital of basketball or something along those lines. And he kept arguing about, I think he's from Illinois. And he said, no, Illinois is. And I'm like, all right, well, let me rephrase the question. And he couldn't get over the fact that I said, and the whole interview was about, no, you're wrong. It's not the capital of basketball. But I don't know why that popped into my head, but Evan Turner was the toughest one. I don't know why, but that was it. Generally speaking, they go very smoothly. They know the drill. I know the drill, and we know what each other is looking for, and it's a very cordial type of a situation. With Evan Turner, it was different. Not that it was terrible, but I didn't.
I won't tag Evan in this video when I put it out there. I'm joking. I'm sure he wouldn't mind. Well, look. So both of you have been fantastic. I want to jump back to the tables in a minute, but Brandon, what's the best way for someone to get a hold of you?
My email at Brandon London. Oh, not there's no at, but Brandon London TV at gmail.com or blondon at nypost.com. You guys can reach out on either one of those. So that's the easiest way for sure.
Great. And yourself, Larry?
On LinkedIn, Facebook, I filled out the profile. It should be on there. And my email is Lawrence with a W .i.berger at gmail.com. And I'd love to hear from anybody who is in the room.
Oh, that's fantastic. Look, you both have been fantastic. I truly appreciate your time. I know it's not easy to squeeze these in sometimes, so I really appreciate it. We can obviously be speaking for another couple of hours, but I'd like to jump back and get everyone else a chance to be able to say hello to you both and have a quick chat before you leave. So thanks again, both of you, Brendan and Larry, for sharing your time today, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Mark, thanks for having me. And Brandon, great seeing you again.
Great seeing you again, Larry.
All right, thanks, gents.